Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 148. I am your one and only host on this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of August 2020. As the summer holidays come to an end and we draw to September, things are hopefully and slowly going to be returning back to normal. As I know for a fact I will be going back to work. I'm sure many other people will be going back to work. Children will be going back to school. So yeah, this is pretty much one of the last podcasts or one of the last few weeks before hopefully everything returns back to normal. That's what I'm hoping. I've got my fingers crossed because the last thing this country, or I think any country really needs, is another lockdown thanks to people being unclean and stupid. But I'm bringing you another short podcast once again, although we do have some trailers to talk about. I definitely wanted to kind of combine the style and approach I did last time, which was mainly talking about general stuff that I was doing over the last 2 weeks, and kind of incorporate it in with a trailer where I have a little bit more to talk about. Although what I am going to be talking about slightly later on is pretty much of the same vein, but I'm sure given by the thumbnail and the title, you kind of already know what it's going to be themed around. But in terms of things I did over the last 2 weeks, I did actually go and play Fall Guys, the game, and it's a lot of fun actually. I haven't played it too much, but and I haven't had too many issues with connection or finding a game, but it's actually a lot of fun, really. I do love how simple it is. I do love how easy it is to just get into a game and just start playing. I mean, it doesn't take too long to load. I mean, you can literally get knocked out in the first round, exit from that game the moment you get eliminated and be playing another game within 30 to 45 seconds. It's quite awesome in that regard, and it is generally fun to play. It never feels like, how should I put it? It always feels like you have a chance, but it does feel like that chance is something you really have to work towards. There's a little bit of luck, there's little bit of skill involved in it, but I never get angry that I get knocked out. It doesn't feel or give me that kind of impression. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's generally just a fun game. There's no real pressure to succeed. To some extent, there's always a want to do as best as you can, which is good. I think if you do have a PS4 or a PC, definitely give it a shot. It's worth your time if you want to play something that's a little bit more mindless but fun at the same time. The other thing I was doing as well was I was playing Borderlands 3 again. For whatever reason, I'd missed the fact that they had released the level cap from level 57 all the way up to 60, so I had to level up my gear. Then I decided I wanted to do the takedowns, which are essentially a singular mission where you have to take out a single boss at the end of this gauntlet style. I did the first one, which came out a long time ago. I think it's the Malawan takedown. I did that fairly easily, although I think the final boss is kind of garbage. And the second one, which I can't remember the name of it, and I think the name and I guess the look of it is technically a bit of a spoiler towards the story of the game, so I won't mention the exact name of it. But the second takedown, I think, is just awful, to be honest. I think there's way too much happening in it, and I think it's just too long, and I think it's too difficult, honestly. And I tried to beat it on the easiest difficulty on my own. I still couldn't do it. I just got annoyed and I just stopped because they expect you to do too much in it, and it's really long. You have to take out a bunch of enemies, then you have to stand on these pads to charge crystals, then they ask you to stand on pads and charge crystals while defending said crystals from enemies, and you have to do that with 3 crystals, and then if an enemy steps on the crystal, it won't start charging, and then there's a secret time limit where if you don't do it in a invisible time, you just die, and you have to start it all the way from the beginning, which I don't think is fair, because just getting to the point with the 3 crystals, or the first lot of 3 crystals, takes about 15 minutes, and that's 15 minutes down the drain. And then you get to the first boss, which could take you, 20 to 25 minutes to beat. And then the last boss is kind of annoying because every time you take out a portion of his health, he just decides he's going to blow up the platform, which is really annoying because at some point he just decides he's going to blow up all the platforms, and I have no idea where you're supposed to go because you have to jump on air pads to escape it, but I don't really know if there's a pattern or whatever. And it's really annoying because I die there and then it's like, hey, you've just lost 25 minutes. So I just kind of thought, no, it's just annoying. I can't be bothered to do it. It's just stupid. And I don't really like these kinds of things, because the worst part about it is that boss I was mentioning, where you have to you have to, avoid him exploding the platforms. That's not the final boss. That's 1/3 of the way through. You then have to go and do more platforming, that if you fall off, you die and you start from the beginning. You then have to charge more crystals while defending it, jumping around. Then you get to the final boss, which takes another 10 to 15 minutes from what I'm seeing, because this boss decides it then wants to teleport you away from the boss and then you have to fight a whole bunch of more enemies to then fight the boss again. It's stupid, and I do not like these. They're really annoying, and they're limited time events. So Gearbox, don't do these again, because they're really annoying, and they're honestly not worth my time or your time making them. Just stick to making the DLC. And the other thing I did over the last 2 weeks, quite recently actually, was I met up with Ferret again, and we had a nice chat. We was hanging out, and it's good to see him. He's got a lot of things going for him right now, and he's just trying to be safe at the same time. We were safe. We were, keeping our distance and going to a more public, open area to chat and that. But let's move on to the news stories and topics. And over the last few days, actually quite recently, because some of this stuff is so recent that I haven't really finished all my notes on it. So if you hear me kind of talking from a distance, that's because I'm checking the rest of my notes, which are just typed out, because some stuff is literally just dropped. I've woken up and to see this kind of stuff. So over the last few days, or I guess over the last week or so, DC has been doing it or promoting its sort of fandom thing. I don't really know what it really does. It's just a bunch of announcements to me. And they've shown off a few things, a few interesting things that were heavily speculated, but it's basically DC going in hard with their announcements. It's kind of a shame that it all kind of seems to just revolve around Batman, but then again, Batman is their best IP, unfortunately. So I guess the first thing we'll talk about is Gotham Knights. This is going to be both the world premiere trailer and the gameplay trailer. Now, before you watch the world premiere trailer, please keep in mind it is a massive spoiler for the Batman Arkham Knight game, which came out 5 years ago. So, if anything, avoid watching the world premiere trailer if you do not want Batman Arkham Knight to be spoilt for you. So I'm just putting that out there so you can't say I didn't warn you. Link is in the description, a download link, so be careful. And also, for spoiler reasons, I won't be mentioning what happens in that cinematic trailer, or at least the spoiler portion of it. But the main crux of this game is that you are going to be playing as 4 of Batman's, I guess, sidekicks for the most part. So you'll be playing as Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood. And each one of those will be somewhat playing slightly differently, and you will essentially be fighting crime in Gotham City, which is an okay concept. I think the idea of a 2 to 4 player, combat game with lesser characters that fight crime is somewhat different in a way, and it's a great, kind of concept. But that's it in this game. I mean, it doesn't really come across as original or doing anything new for the series, because you have to keep in mind this is like the 5th or 6th time we've seen this game again. And as much as I'm sure people love these games and want more, there's been like I've said, a 5-year gap between the last one. And I'll be honest, Arkham Knight wasn't the best game, honestly, and I don't think this game is doing it any favors, and it is a bit concerning. I'm not really seeing anything that's worth hyping about or anything really interesting, and I did get a bit worried when the creative director who does the gameplay trailer, or talks of the gameplay trailer, mentioned builds. Now, I really hope this game doesn't make the same mistakes that the Avengers game has made or is making, by focusing so much on equipable gear and builds for your characters, because that kind of stuff, mainly in the Avengers game, kind of slows and stops the game to a grinding halt, and you're kind of just in boring menus, just like swapping out items and changing things for small percentages and, aesthetical changes that do nothing or you can't see them. So a good example is like in the Avengers game, you can like change the bones of like your main character and stuff like that. And it does like a tiny fraction difference in terms of like speed and strength and that. And you can't literally see the difference of the bones. It just doesn't do anything. And I understand, before anyone says I'm a hypocrite, yes, I have played games like Borderlands where it is all about loot and equipable items. But here's the thing, Borderlands was based around finding the best loot. When you think of Batman, you don't think of gotta get the best loot and equipment, now do you? Same thing with Avengers. You don't necessarily think of the Hulk as someone who wears a lot of equipment, now do you? Or characters that change their spinal cord and stuff like that. So it doesn't really fit here, in my opinion, and I just hope it doesn't get bogged down in just annoying grinding to get that one item that makes you punch like 2% harder. It kind of seems a bit annoying. I don't like this trend, and I hope it doesn't go there. I mean, and the other things I'm not really liking about this trailer, mainly the gameplay trailer, is I don't like how talkative the characters are. They're constantly quipping, and I think it's really annoying, especially when in that gameplay trailer, a good few hundred people got killed, and you're making jokes, and it's like, really? That's kind of why the Batman Arkham games worked, because Batman stayed silent, because he wouldn't be constantly chatting all the time, and also it helped you get into the role as I am Batman. Here it doesn't have that same gravitas where characters are constantly shouting and screaming and making noises. It's just kind of annoying to have Batgirl, saying rubbish to Mr. Freeze. It just doesn't come across as cool. And also, like, when they were fighting Mr. Freeze in that trailer, there's like numbers popping up as hit points, like as you fight him. That looked really odd. Like, what the hell was that about? It's like, it makes me think it's like a MOBA or like an arcade beat 'em up. It does kind of kill the immersion a little bit to some extent. Now I know, yeah, there was like a combo meter, and I know there was a health bar in the original Batman games, but you don't need all that crap on the screen. Come on now. Let's move on to the next trailer. Sticking with Batman, we have The Batman, which is a trailer that kind of just released. It's more of a teaser trailer, and this trailer looks really rough, and that's completely understandable because the film is not finished. This trailer makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a collection of scenes that have been filmed that they're trying to make into a narrative. So it's just a bunch of like shots they have of filming and production. So it makes no sense whatsoever, which is perfectly fine. That's what happens. But yeah, the footage does look very rough. It obviously hasn't been touched up or anything like that, and it looks like a TV film at the moment, but it looks okay. I'm very interested in Robert Pattinson's performance. I believe he can pull off a role like this, and I think he will most likely be the best part of this film, because Warner Brothers / DC have a massive tendency to always mess up their own films. But I'm very interested. I think Joker is meant to be, not Joker, Riddler is meant to be the new villain in this, but they're basically trying to make him the new Joker, essentially. Someone who is obsessed with Batman and wants attention and all that kind of stuff. I have a feeling they're going to make the Riddler more of a Zodiac 7, like, serial killer kind of thing, which could work. But overall, it looks okay. There isn't really too much to say about it other than it's promising. But, we'll see. I think Robert Pattinson will steal the show at the end of the day. Next trailer I want to talk about is The Suicide Squad, not to be confused with Suicide Squad. This is essentially the reboot to Suicide Squad that came out a couple of years ago and that no one really liked because, well, there's plenty of reasons people didn't like it. But in a really weird choice, they decided to release a official cast reveal trailer and a sneak peek at the behind the scenes filming of the film, as opposed to a conventional film trailer, which is interesting for the most part. And I guess I'll talk about both of them at the same time and talk about things that are rather interesting about this film and how we kind of got to this point. Because, and this is me kind of checking my notes for the most part, it is an interesting situation. I do find it very funny that of all the people in this film, Margot Robbie and the lady who plays the person who's in charge of the organization are the only two characters to not be replaced. Captain Boomerang has been replaced, which is quite funny. I would have thought they would have, scrapped everyone, but I don't know. Here's what to say. It's very interesting to see what can become of this film, because there's a lot riding on this film for the most part, because they're going up against the success of the Avengers film, which were a massive success. Everyone knows them. Both Justice League and the Suicide Squad film, the original one, failed to get mainstream audiences. And also you have shows like The Boys that have proven that you can make dark, disturbing, satirical, and commentary-based stories on comics and superheroes. It can be done. And you have to keep in mind, Suicide Squad and Justice League failed to do that. So obviously a lot's riding on this, and they're going with a slightly more different approach that's a little bit more satirical and fun to some extent. And I guess that kind of brings me to the, cast for the most part, which is the one thing that I guess is the most interesting thing about it, other than James Gunn directing, who is a really good director. And let me just bring my notes real quick so that I can actually read some of them, because this was the one trailer which I wasn't necessarily able to get too many notes written down in time. But in terms of people in the film, which is quite interesting, I mean, obviously Margot Robbie is playing Harley Quinn. Then Idris Elba, of all people, is going to be Bloodsport. You then got John Cena, very surprisingly, who is Peacemaker. And then you got some really interesting cast members I was not expecting to see, like Pete Davidson, Peter Capaldi, I'm just thinking of someone else. And there's a few other people that I'm not necessarily too familiar with for the most part, because there are a lot of characters in this that are very surprising, some very unheard of characters, like a Polka Dot Man is going to be in it. You got, I forget the shark dude, I forget the shark dude's name, but the guy who's basically like a human shark. It's not White Shark, but it's someone else. Also Ratcatcher 2. I say Ratcatcher 2 because the original Ratcatcher was a man, and the person playing Ratcatcher in this film is a lady, so I'm guessing it's the second person to take the helm of Ratcatcher. So that's pretty interesting. Most interesting enough, I think, in terms of the cast is Weasel, played by Sean Gunn, who is James Gunn's brother, and he does a lot of work on some of his films. He is, if I remember correctly, he did some motion capture. He does motion capture, but I think he did some motion capture in Guardians of the Galaxy. But, speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, Michael Rooker is in there, of course, as Sora. I forget the guy's name. Oh, Servant, which is, standard par for a James Gunn film. Yeah, Sean Gunn is playing Weasel. Now, what the hell is going on with Weasel's look in that film? Like, why does he have to look like that? Like, it is so bizarre, because in the behind the scenes trailer, if you watch it, there's a shot you see of Weasel, and I can't tell if that is practical effects, as in like a suit and makeup, or that's CGI. But regardless, that looks pretty cool, and it looks really creepy. Like, he looks so weird in this film. Like, I think that's kind of the point of the character, because I kind of think that what he is he's obviously a slightly more of a joke character, but I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to kind of take a jab at those kind of superhero characters that are like anthropomorphic animals, like, oh, they're, half animal, half human, because when you look at him, he's like a 5'7" slim guy, he doesn't look necessarily strong. He doesn't look necessarily fast. He just looks like a mutated man who so happens to look like some kind of third creature. It's honestly really creepy, and I can see children actually being frightened of him because he has these awful bug eyes and these awful jagged teeth. And in the sneak peek trailer, he's like licking the window, and he's got this awful tongue. Oh, it looks so weird, but it's so striking at the same time. It's bizarre. I have a feeling it's a slight jab, but this is what anthropomorphic or furry characters would actually look like, which is quite funny. They would look absolutely horrible and freakish. But I am interested as well as to see what's going to happen in this film, because I think half the cast that they show off are going to die. I think they're either going to be killed off in like the first like 30 minutes or in a montage. And what I also think is that John Cena's character Peacemaker, I think he's going to die at the very end. And the reason I think that is because in the behind the scenes trailer, John Cena talks about how his character is like a more like corrupt or a bad Captain America, where he believes that in order to do justice and, be a hero, it's fine to kill as many people as possible, which is a pretty awesome concept. And I think what's going to happen is he's going to sacrifice himself at the very end, truly learning what it means to be a hero. And that's what I think is going to happen. He's going to like do the ultimate sacrifice. I think most of these characters will die off because it is a very big cast. I highly doubt Idris Elba's character is going to die off. I highly doubt Pete Davidson's character, which is Blackguard, is going to die off. And there's a few others I can see. I think definitely a few joke characters will probably live. I can very easily see Michael Rooker's character die. I can also see the other lady who's like orange skin. I can see her sticking around because she does seem like quite powerful. Some of these characters I don't know. I don't know about them, but I can see people like Polka Dot Man and possibly Weasel. I can see definitely being killed off straight away, because if I remember correctly, Weasel Man is just a weasel, and I think Polka Dot Man, he can just throw like polka dots, which like I think confuse you or something like that. I don't know, but it is a very interesting thing to look at, basically. And I don't know if it's going to be actually no, scratch that. I know this film for sure will be better than the first one because Jared Leto is not in this film. Because he single-handedly sunk that film. Because Jared Leto is a massive... I gotta be careful with the words. He's a very egotistical man who doesn't deserve anything. And I'm glad he's not getting any work. But yeah, I'm somewhat interested. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground on this one. And I'm sure many people are. It is definitely very exciting to some extent to see DC actually take a risk, because they've never really done that. Oh, actually, no, I tell a lie. They did that with Joker. That was a big risk. And they did that with Shazam, in that they actually decided to make a good film. But I guess that's pretty much all I want to talk about on this podcast. It's been very DC centric, but then again, it's the only thing that's kind of been worth talking about for the most part. Like I said, I don't really want to just talk about trailers for the sake of it. I had something to say about each of these trailers, and they're going to be the most talked about things, possibly even the more exciting things coming next year, which is pretty cool. I think everything is set for next year, so maybe we'll see DC actually kind of gain some more fans, because I know Marvel is kind of on a break right now, and it should really be on a break, because after Avengers, was it Endgame? I think it's Endgame. What was the last one? Yeah, I think people need a break from that. But yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up the podcast. I'll leave you guys with the video of the episode, which is going to be by Tkay Maidza. I believe that's how you say her name, with So Sad. Fantastic, summery, very appropriately catchy song from Tkay. She's a really interesting artist. I highly recommend, after you watch this video, definitely checking out her EP that just came out, titled Last Year Was Weird Volume 2. Really good, possibly one of my more favorite releases this year, and I think she honestly needs a lot more support, because I think she's a really great talent. And I love this song and I love this music video. Hopefully you guys do. Everything I've talked about will be in the download link and the description. And if you want to hit me up for whatever reason on my Twitter, which I don't really use, that's at Angry Raccoon. Only one C in the raccoon. Everything will be in the link in the description. Yeah, that's pretty much the podcast. A short one, but at least I had a little bit more to talk about in terms of things happening in the course of media for that much. And yeah, I'm just kind of glad that it's no longer really sunny in this country. The heat was pretty rough. I don't mind the heat, but when it gets to the point where it was last week, that was a bit too much. I wasn't able to get things done, and I was behind on schedule. And I want to get things done before I'm back to work, because I know that it is just going to be full throttle, all shifts forward, or at 10, or however that expression goes. Yeah, I'm trying to think of this expression. Basically, all hands on deck when it comes to September in terms of making that money for a lot of people. But yeah, I guess on that note, I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.